Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am Kristen Boyce, a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice, Pathways to Healing Counseling. Through conversations, education, strategies, and shared stories, we will be closing the chapter on all the thoughts, feelings, people, and circumstances that don't serve you anymore and open the door to possibilities and the real you. You won't want to miss an episode, so be sure to subscribe. Welcome to this week's Close the Chapter podcast. You're here for a reason. You're listening to this podcast because you are on a mission to grow, to improve, to break patterns, to get healthy, to have more energy, to have more longevity. You came to the right place because that's the same mission I'm on. And I hope that this podcast helps you in whatever ways that you need to find the freedom in your life, to close the chapter on what doesn't serve you anymore, and to open the doors to possibility. You are important and you're here for a reason. And my guest today is to help us have more energy, to help us feel better about ourselves and listen to our bodies. Our bodies are so wise. And nutrition can help in that healing process. Meg Bowman is a licensed nutritionist and educator specializing in the powerful intersection of mental health and nutrition. She is the co-founder of several organizations that reflect her commitment to functional, compassionate, and evidence-based care, including Nutrition Hive, a functional group nutrition practice supporting clients navigating mental health, hormone, and gastrointestinal conditions. She also teaches, and she's the author of her book, This Is Your Body on Trauma, How to Nourish Safety, Resilience, and Connection with Polyvagal Informed Nutrition, which explores how nutrition can be used as a tool for trauma recovery and nervous system regulation. I ask her about everything. I'm like, we're on this protein craze. Talk to me about mental health and protein, carbs, sugar. We talk about it all. And she also gives us what these things do to us mentally and in our body. And really, it's about our thoughts too, and our conditioning and our trauma that lives in the body. And I appreciated her compassionate way of looking at our relationship with food. It's not about pushing through at all. It's about listening to your body and what it's telling you. So I appreciate her perspective, and I think it'll be helpful in really figuring out how to nurture yourself in a healthier, better way. So here is my conversation with Meg. Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast. I am really excited to talk about trauma and nutrition. It's something we don't think about. We're hearing more about how nutrition impacts healing and your healing journey, but how important nutrition is in the healing process. So I'm so excited to have Meg join us today. Welcome to the Close the Chapter podcast.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to be here.
Tell us how you got started on this journey of nutrition and how it connects to trauma in the body.
It came pretty organically to me. Actually, this was a career change for me. So I worked in marketing and ad agencies, and about 15 years ago, I was diagnosed with Crohn's. And I was back in school in 3 months because it was so clear to me that, my developing that autoimmune was trauma-based and stress-based. And I really looked at that experience as an opportunity for me to help myself. And then I went, oh, maybe this is something I can do for other people. So that's basically how we got here.
How did you know it was a trauma, that your autoimmune was connected to trauma? How did you figure that out? Because many people don't connect the two.
Yeah, I think somewhat it was instinct. We're talking 15 years ago. So there was not nearly as much literature as there is now. There weren't kind of famous folks talking about things like this. But instinctually, I was just so aware that my symptoms were tied directly to my perception of stress. And I couldn't get any of my physicians to hear that or understand that or be able to speak to that. And so I just really wanted to see what can you do to support mental health and trauma through nutrition.
Good for you. Because it is becoming more, I mean, there's more out there than there used to be. And how did you figure out that stress
Mhm.
was directly connected to how your body was responding? Because we know now, I mean, decades now, that stress, the importance of what stress does to the body. How did you figure that out?
I think it really was a personal thing, and it's something that I've seen with so many clients. My specialty is mental health and GI, and I have come to understand those are basically the same thing. Mental health and GI. I had the same experience. You'll see people come in and they're having these horrific, like life is really lifing, and they're going through a heck of a hard time. And all of a sudden, they have all kinds of GI symptoms that they haven't had before. And the second they have a GI symptom, suddenly we're, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? We start to catastrophize. That anxiety starts to build. And the more and more that anxiety builds, all of a sudden we start having more GI symptoms. So it just becomes this feedback loop that feeds on itself. And so trying to figure out where could we intercede and break that feedback loop and find messages of safety that we can send to the gut really became something that I was super interested in.
So, how does someone begin to tell the gut that some messages of safety to the gut?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's largely unsexy. I totally acknowledge that I could sit here and I could talk to you about all kinds of biochemical pathways and all kinds of, very interesting things. And it's things that we already know how to do. Regular, well-balanced meals, eating foods with fiber in them, eating foods with color, fruits and vegetables with color. And being aware also that nutrition is both a top down and a bottom up approach. So, bottom up meaning the stuff that we're eating that's hopefully sending us messages of safety, but also top down in that let's see if we can identify those moments, hopefully with the help of a therapy provider, where we have that feeling, oh my gosh, I'm having this symptom. What tools can we use so we don't catastrophize and continue that feedback loop?
Yes, because I find if you've got an autoimmune, it
Yeah.
can really be triggering if you have a
Yeah.
symptom. So you're thinking, oh
Yeah.
my gosh, there's something majorly wrong. I'm having a flare up. How is this going to settle down? I feel terrible. This is never going to get better. How do you help people with that?
I think a few things. When we think about I'm going to always go back to let's take a look at polyvagal theory. So, polyvagal theory, as described by Stephen Porges, there are three main ways that we get messages of safety and danger: inside the body, outside the body, and in between relationships. And so, I would say that if we're having danger messages that we're experiencing, we're going to look, what could we do inside the body to calm that down? Is there anything that we can do outside the body? Is there anything that we can do between relationships? As a marriage and family therapist, I have a feeling you know that one intimately. Like, is there anything we can do there that'll kind of turn the dial down on the stress response?
So let's talk about nutrition because
Yeah.
many of us did not grow up in homes where nutrition was. Some did now, but I would say most of us did not grow up in
Yeah.
homes where nutrition was top priority. It was convenience, it was processed foods, it was just not really talked about. It can be so overwhelming for folks when they're already stressed to be thinking about nutrition. Where does someone begin the process?
I love this question. And I really feel like before I start talking, I got to say it is different for everybody. And I really invite people to lean into that. If what I'm saying does not resonate with you, cool, let's find something that does. I don't pretend that I have the answer and that the answer is going to be exactly the same for every person. What I would say is when I work with my clients, especially people that have a past history of trauma or experiencing significant stress now, we actually create two separate toolkits for them. We create a nutrition toolkit when they are in the midst of it, and we create a totally separate toolkit when they feel like they have bandwidth. And those look like two different things. I'll give you an example. This is a personal example, but this week I happen to be recording, I think, 4 podcasts and 2 TV shows, which is terrifying. And so my nervous system, I feel very blessed, and this is amazing. And my nervous system is definitely experiencing some, like, I wish to be a cottage hag in the woods, get me out of here, let me run away and be alone. Because of that, what I had to do this week in terms of food to navigate is I did it totally differently. On a regular basis, I don't plan my meals. I am somebody who I work the first shift, so I get off at 3 p.m. and I love to cook. It's actually fun for me. I enjoy it. I live very close to a grocery store, so if I'm missing something, I can go get it. So there's in my regular life, when I have capacity, there's a lot of flexibility that I have with food. Not this week. This week, we know exactly what we're having. We have our emergency orders. I have the grocery list that is in the app ready for delivery. There's a lot of shelf-stable, single-serving stuff that was on my grocery list this week for me and the kiddo. And so it's just a different approach to how can we eat in a way that really serves us when we are experiencing a lot of stress. And then what does it look like for us when we have capacity to choose? We have capacity to have fun with it.
Okay, so someone says, I don't even know a grocery list. Like, I don't even know.
Yeah.
I'm almost like in such a trauma response. My body's in freeze, maybe. Maybe I'm in a
Yeah.
flight response. Maybe I'm dissociating and I just have a hard time kind of pulling it together. And I don't even know where to begin. Like, it's all overwhelming. How does someone begin to even make a list, figure out what to eat to help their nervous system?
Well, I would say that if we are truly in a survival state, if we are in a protective state, really during that time, I think our only goal is to feel safe again. And so, as an example, when I was making my plan for this week, I did it at a time that I was really calm. I did it when I felt safe. I did it on my couch under a blanket. I didn't try to do it when I am answering 10,000 emails and messages and all of the things. So I think the first thing I'd invite people to do is see if we can find a time where we have access to more safety and more regulation, because that's when we actually have the capacity to think through what we might want to do. Don't expect yourself in the midst of something to come up with a great plan. That's not how our brains are wired. So find a little bubble of safety. And if you need help with it, like, friends are great at this. Friends often will have all kinds of ideas. People have all kinds of thoughts about what is delicious and easy. And so that might be a tool that somebody could use just to start building their toolkit of what they can do.
What kinds of foods should we be? We hear a lot about protein. We hear a lot about how much protein and how much fiber. How much protein and how much fiber should we be eating or consuming?
Wow, we are having a protein moment. I don't know who
We
protein's
are.
publicist is, but woo, they are.
They have hit the bestseller list. It's the
They
New
are
York Times
making it.
bestseller. I mean, protein is everywhere. And people are so confused. I think people are lost because you're hearing so many different things on the good old social media networks.
Yeah, and cottage cheese especially. I mean, I'm of the age that I remember when cottage cheese was popular and it served a very different purpose many years ago than it does today. Why do we recommend you eat it from the perspective of mental health nutrition? We're not recommending it because we want you to build more muscle. That's not why we're doing it. That's why people at the gym do it. From my perspective, protein is one of the building blocks to make safety signals. So to make neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA for calm and safety and dopamine for focus, that actually is built off of an amino acid from protein. So in people that eat too little protein, you actually can see signs of depression and anxiety that come when people are deprived of too much of protein. In our society, it is kind of rare for me to see that as the reason that somebody's feeling anxious or depressed. It definitely happens. I would say maybe more so 8, 9 years ago with teenagers. Somebody would have a cereal for breakfast and they'd have a bagel for lunch and they'd have cheese pizza. And you'd say, oh, could we maybe just add a little bit of protein? And it was awesome how they felt better really soon. It's pretty rare to see that. So I would say try and get a source of protein with every meal. If you want to explore whether eating a little bit more might affect you differently, go ahead and try it. Absolutely. But don't hyperfixate on it. I think sometimes when we have experienced trauma, we hyperfixate on a fix it, fix it, fix it, and we get stuck on something. And if we get stuck on saying, oh my goodness, I'm not eating enough protein, and that's the only thing we do, we lose our ability to look at other possibilities.
How about when we think about fiber?
Yeah.
What does that do?
Oh, I got a good story about fiber. Okay. So we all eat too little fiber, all of us in the US. That's kind of a systematic problem that we got. We really should all eat more fiber. People have a tendency, especially if they're in a survival state, to kind of go from I eat nothing to I eat everything. I had a gentleman, it was a 54-year-old gentleman, who came in and he ate no fruits or vegetables. And we spent some time figuring out, like, what do you like? What do you enjoy? And he asked me repeatedly, how many should I be eating? And I kind of gave him a general idea. But then I said, now, just for this week, we're going to do 1 serving a day, because he was eating none. And he, like many people, came back the next week, having eaten all the vegetables and fruit. He was eating like 13 servings a day. My preferred term is disaster pants. Other people call it diarrhea, but I like disaster pants.
Like
it seems to, right? It really accurately describes what's happening. But he had just gone from nothing to everything. And so when we're playing around, especially with something like fiber, we want to really think of it like a dial on the stove, where you're just kind of turning it up slowly. You're not going from nothing to everything. Otherwise, you might get disaster pants.
How about sugar? Because, sugar can affect mental health.
Yeah,
Let's
absolutely.
talk about that.
So I think one of the things that I'm really curious about, especially during, if you have a client that's having a lot of mood swings during a day, during a 24-hour period, one of the things that I get really curious about is blood sugar balance. And just seeing if there's anything happening there. Generally speaking, I like to add things more than take away, because there is a lot of data in the literature that when we take things away from people, sometimes we can it sets people up for binging later. So rather than go the direction of let's eat less, I go the direction of, can we get 3 well-balanced meals? Then see if you want some snacks. Can we make sure that we're having protein? Can we make sure that we're having those things? There was a study, I saw it years ago. I'm not going to be able to pull it out of my back pocket, but it was a study on binge eating disorder. And what they found was people who had well-balanced meals, there was like an 80% reduction in binge eating episodes. So when somebody tells me that I'm so reactive to sugar, I think the place that I always go is, let's make sure these really foundational principles of nourishing yourself are present.
Yeah, sugar's a tough one, because sugar's
It's
in
a tough
so
one.
much. I mean, it's a tough one. How important is noticing your own body's response to certain foods?
Yeah.
Like,
I think we need to be super aware of it. We all have foods that may sit better or sit worse at times. And we have foods that sometimes we've heard so-and-so say that they can't eat this food. And all of a sudden we're wondering if we shouldn't be eating this food. So there is kind of also that psychosomatic piece that we need to be really aware of. When I work with a client where I'm wondering if they're reacting to a food, one of the things that we sometimes do is we try and reintroduce that food. I usually reintroduce it 3 times, because the first time you reintroduce it, if there's a reaction, that might be anxiety. And the second time, probably less anxiety. The third time, I'm like, you're getting a migraine every time you eat chocolate. Maybe we need to investigate this more and leave that out for now. But it's definitely a really challenging thing, because I think a trauma response that people have is to, again, have a symptom which may or may not be associated with the food, and then think that we have to avoid that food forevermore. And that becomes really dangerous nutritionally if that is our pattern, because the more we have GI symptoms after we eat, the more we're avoiding, and then the less positive input our microbiomes have to send us signals of safety. So it's, again, kind of a feedback loop that we need to watch.
what has been one of the most important things you've learned about nutrition and mental health that surprised you?
That's a fabulous question. Something that surprised me. I think the thing that I would say is how interconnected they are. I have the privilege of working with a lot of postgraduate nutrition interns, and one of them was working with a pastor who had recently retired from her church, and she was filling in at another church temporarily. And the reason that she was filling in was that church's pastor had just been fired. So there was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of stress. There were a lot of really hurt feelings. She was walking into a little bit of a firestorm. And this lady, before this job, this temporary job, she rarely had reflux, like maybe once a month, maybe once every 6 months. She wouldn't react to food. She had no major nutrition issues as relates to her digestion. She really didn't. And within a couple weeks of being in this environment, she had unrelenting GI urgency after meals, which, as you can imagine, if you are working in a church, people feed you. Like, that's what they want to do. They want to feed you and they want to have you over for lunch. And every event has food. And she really struggled because it's like, do I not eat and potentially offend people, or do I eat and have to run to the bathroom? And it was so clear that this was a stress-induced thing that was happening. There were antecedents. She had had a lot of food poisoning in her history. There were things that had happened to her, but this was a major trigger. And it shocked me. My intern was able to get like a 20% reduction in symptoms with the things that they did, which is amazing. And then this lady's job, the temporary position, finished and the symptoms went away. And so it just amazes me how much our physical health goes back to that stress response. And even so, 20% reduction in symptoms, we say, oh, it wasn't a complete resolution of symptoms. Yeah, but it was a 20% reduction in symptoms. That's a pretty big reduction. So even though a lot of it is due to stress, there is still stuff that we can do to help our body's perception of stress.
And what are some of those things that we
Yeah.
can do?
I always think about messages of safety as protein, fiber, color. An amazing thing to think about is just the color in the fruits and vegetables you eat. If you normally get a bag of carrots that's just orange, hey, maybe you get the tricolor bag. If we can get a little bit of diversity in our food, so you normally get Gala apples, maybe we can get the Fuji. Even if it's still the same food, maybe we can get diversity through the variety of it. How can we send those messages of safety through the colors that we eat? Even if it means, honestly, my favorite trick for this, if I was trying to get a multicolored plate, I don't want to have a whole purple cabbage in my fridge. I will not use a whole purple cabbage. I will not use 10,000 different whole vegetables in my fridge. But you know what? I can go to the salad bar and get like 3 tablespoons of shredded purple cabbage, and it's going to be real cheap. So even using some of those tools to get the colors that we can, but not having to work so hard by thinking we have to cook absolutely everything and make everything from scratch.
That helps because people think I've got to buy organic. Which is, if you can, okay.
Sure.
Lots of us can't. Can't buy organic. So what do you say to that?
Yeah. Fed is best. We use that for kids, but I'm going to say for adults too. Fed is best. If you are in a trauma response and the only thing that you have access to is mac and cheese, fed is best. People generally have 2 different responses in the literature to kind of acute trauma. There's the people that don't eat at all, and there's the people that maybe eat past fullness. I really worry about the people that don't eat at all. I think our society focuses on the people that eat past fullness, but I really worry about the people that don't eat at all. I had a colleague of mine, a dietitian, who there was a loss in her family, and she very not on purpose lost 15 pounds in 3 months because she just couldn't eat. So fed is best, regardless of how that looks when you're in a trauma response. And when you get back to some semblance of safety, that's where we can figure out what it might look like to intentionally nourish ourselves.
I really like that. Fed is best because I do think a lot of people either they can eat to try to self-soothe,
Yeah.
and then there's those folks that example you just gave where they're not hungry and they don't eat at all or
Yeah.
very little because they're in grief or loss or some sort of a traumatic situation has happened, and changes the hunger cues.
Oh, it entirely does. There was a really interesting study that I looked at in my book that was done on some of the refugees from Ukraine. And there were definite phenotypes. There were the people who really didn't eat, they were not hungry, and food felt nauseous a little bit. And then there's the people that food was an adaptive coping tool. You know, if that becomes our only coping tool, that may become maladaptive over time, but it is an adaptive coping tool in the moment for sure.
Glad you said that because there's so much shame around food and our relationship with food that I think gets distorted.
Well, and I think, again, we are inserting meaning into that
Mhm.
that does not understand how our nervous system works. If we understand what that true fight, flight, freeze spectrum looks like, then all of this just becomes really obvious. My kiddo was diagnosed in 2017 with a pretty terrifying to me, but well-managed chronic disease, eosinophilic esophagitis. And I still remember the day that he got that diagnosis. I sent my husband to the grocery store and I'm like, dude, go get all the carbs. Like, just go get all the carbs because that was the only thing that I had that day. I was in a full dorsal shutdown, like under the covers in bed. That's all I had. And you know what? Great. I ate some ice cream. I had some potato chips. And the next day I got up and I did what I needed to do. So when we use the food as a tool in that moment, it's understandable. It's where our nervous system is finding comfort. If that's your only tool, that's where we need to start building our toolkit.
Yeah, I think you're the first person that's ever said that on the podcast. And I think it needs to be said. I think it's an
It
important
is.
thing that needs to be said because people associate overeating or undereating, where you want to frame it. I mean, those are very polarizing, but it's not an all or nothing. And I hear what you're saying. It's a spectrum. If this is your only coping tool, then we need to come up with some other coping strategies. There
Yeah.
will be circumstances where this is the best you can do in the moment, or you need
Yeah.
that for whatever reason.
I'll give you a great example. Family holiday parties.
Oh,
You
here
know,
we
for a
go.
lot of
This is so true.
that's a mixed bag for a lot of people. That's a mixed bag. And people walk into those. I think every nutrition provider, as I'm sure therapy providers also have this, but we walk into the food holiday quarter of the year kind of grimacing and squinting because we know what's coming. And guess what?
Mhm.
Those food holidays where you know that Aunt Karen's going to comment on your job and how you haven't lived up to your potential. Yeah, there's delicious stuffing. Go eat the stuffing. Cool. And then we're going to leave and we're going to talk about Aunt Karen in therapy and we're going to process that, right? And we're going to move on with our lives. Cool.
Yes, it's so true. I'm like, we got to process
Yep.
because we got to move it up and out of the body because those live in our body, those comments, those environments, those people. We're like, okay, well, and you can feel your body's response in those family environments. You mentioned carbs for your son when you
Yeah.
got the diagnosis, when your son got the diagnosis, you're like, give me the carbs, give me the carbs.
Hmm.
Carbs have kind of been on we know lots of carb diets. I hate the word diet, by the way, but
Yeah.
like these fads, let me call them
Yeah.
fads.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on carbs and mental health?
Ooh, that's a super detailed, interesting question. So, there is a lot of research that's being done right now on kind of the keto diet as a way to improve mental health outcomes. I personally don't think we're there yet. A lot of those studies are done in a highly prescriptive way. I've had a lot of clients that have tried that and they wash out after 6 weeks and they say, I can't live my life this way. Generally speaking, I think we have, as a society, highly demonized carbs. As much as protein is on a wow, that's the hero track, the villain appears to be carbs. And I've worked with so many people that feel really triggered with carbohydrates, and sometimes it takes a hot minute. We work on it. But there's often an emotional trigger. There's an emotion that comes with that, like there was for me when I was like, go get all the carbs. Like there was a soothing thing that came with that. And sometimes we can work on that emotional trigger. I had a client who couldn't bring cookies into the house, never could bring cookies into the house. And it took us about a year of sessions, but we got to the point that she could bring cookies in the house and they'd still be there a month later. There was a lot of lived history of food trauma in the household and her being told that she wasn't an acceptable size and that she shouldn't eat that. And when we had kind of worked on that and really got her nutrition on good footing, it didn't have the same meaning to her. And it was there and she could leave it or eat it if she wanted to.
That's some deep work right there.
Yeah,
It really is. Another nutritionist said a recommendation is eat the carbs last. So if you've got bread, they serve the bread at the table, eat your veggies, eat your protein. And then if you're still hungry, then you can have the roll. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't love the if then in it because it feels a little bit like Weight Watchers jargon from the 80s. If you drink a cup of water and you're still hungry, then you're really hungry. But if you drink a cup of water, then you were never actually hungry. It feels a little like that to me. I will say for clients who have blood sugar issues and we are in pre-diabetes, diabetes land, sure, we are going to look at food ordering, the order in which we eat food, as one of the approaches that we take to get our blood sugar balanced, for sure. And for a lot of other people, it's not going to be the first thing that I'm going to try. It definitely wouldn't be the first thing that I would try.
That makes sense if you have blood sugar issues that you're going to go more towards food ordering. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll give you an example. If we're taking this in the mental health world, if you find yourself really having kind of peaks and valleys through the day, especially peaks and valleys that seem to correlate to I ate a meal, peak, 2 hours later, valley, like if that is kind of a pattern in your physiology, it probably is worth seeing what does it feel like if I eat the carbs on my plate last? What is the experience of that? Does that still happen? If that's not your pattern and we're not seeing evidence in your labs that blood sugar is an issue, you got a normal A1C, you got a normal fasting glucose, then your body is really equipped to handle that. And let's just, again, go back to can we eat normally? Can we eat regularly? Which is honestly, in this world that we live in, I think eating 3 well-balanced meals regularly is kind of a radical thing. So like, who does that these days? It's really shocking. We just don't do it anymore. We have kids that have practices and performances and work and commutes and woo! So that radical self-care, I think, always comes first.
Yes, I'm glad you said that. What books have you read that have been the most impactful for you? I love this question. Everybody loves impactful books. For you, what have they been? Like a couple.
So I think I read a lot of Deb Dana because she writes in Polyvagal Theory.
She's been on our podcast.
No, I know. I did listen to it. It was good. But you'll appreciate this. I'm wearing a t-shirt that I made right now, and it says, in case of dorsal shutdown, play Deb Dana.
I love so does she know about that?
No.
I love that.
It's so fun. I just launched an Etsy store called Regulate This because I have all these phrases that come to me.
You do.
And I just can't help myself.
Well, they're helpful. People love a phrase or a mantra or something.
Yeah.
They do.
It makes it so much easier. So I love Deb Dana. I love the work she does. And I'm going to give you one that's a little bit different and very different, actually. Literally Anything by Clarissa Pinkola Estes, preferably on audio. That woman can put me into regulation in 30 seconds. Just listening to her is the most calming thing for my nervous system. I love Linda Tai. I don't know that she's written a book at this point, but I kind of fangirl her and everything I've seen her write. Yeah, I think that's where I'll go.
I love this because you're noticing your nervous system's response. I hear that. That's what you're noticing.
That is what it is for me. Really, honestly, and it sounds kind of weird. This was a career change for me. I've had a couple career changes in my life. My first degree, I know it's weird, is in a master's in medieval studies, which is really weird.
I love that.
But I focused on like food and herbals, so it's kind of related a little bit. When I finished that grad program, I could not read nonfiction for 10 years. I needed fiction only, and the cheesier and the easier read, the better. And so then I went into grad school again for nutrition, and then I read all of this, severe textbook. And now I'm just all about who can give me the message in a way that my nervous system can just relax while hearing it.
That is self-care right there.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, and I think it's Casey Davis, How to Keep House While Drowning. 100% the most kind book that I have ever read about house care while overwhelmed.
I have not heard that.
You have to read it. It is a gift to everybody who is dealing with anything. And just the brilliance and the things that you're like, you got to be kidding. Of course I can do that.
Ooh, so it's more digestible. Like it gives you hope that I can do it, even if I'm drowning in the middle of everything else I have going on. Oh, I love that.
Honestly, she was my tone inspiration for the book that I wrote, because I was like, I want everyone to be able to read and, pun intended, digest. One of the things she says in there is if you just have a few dishes and you don't have the energy to like unload your whole dishwasher, guess what? Put the dishes in and run it again. I mean, just really accessible things that make it possible.
It's like permission slips that sometimes we need. Like, just run it again and it's okay. You don't have to wait till it's full again. And you're like, no, oh, okay, all right. Someone else gave me the permission to do it. And now you kind of internalize that and do it for yourself.
Yeah, if your entire goal is to bring more fruit and vegetable and fiber, you know how you can do that? On a day where you're really exhausted, you can order a salad with your pizza delivery. Like that happens. And you can do that, and really figuring out all those ways in which we have permission to do what we need to do, and it's okay.
I love that. What didn't we cover that you feel like with mental health, polyvagal, with your nervous system, that was really important that we didn't cover? What would that be?
I think it's a little bit of the how. How do we make change? We are right now going into my least favorite holiday of the year, which is New Year's Day. And it's my least favorite holiday because in the 15 to 30 days after New Year's Day, everybody is going to be mean to themselves. They are going to experience so much shame and blame nutrition-wise. They're going to set themselves up for these amazing sounding, very healthy sounding, I'm going to do all these things and I'm going to be a better person. And in all these ways I've screwed up, but I'm not going to screw up anymore because on January 1st, this is how I'm going to do it. I think the invitation here is really to understand our nervous system and understand that, yeah, we're making that plan and we're making that New Year's resolution, hopefully in a regulated state where we have bandwidth. And then guess what? You're going to have a crap day. And you're not going to be able to do the thing. And then all of a sudden you feel like crap because you were supposed to do this and everybody else is doing this. And why can't I do this? But if we really understand that nervous system is not an on and off switch, it's not like a fight or flight or rest and digest. It's like an oven dial. If we understand that that's how it works, there's too much energy sometimes, too little energy. And there's just right. If we understand that, then if our goal is to eat more vegetables, we can, on a really rough day, order pizza with a salad on the side. And on a day that we actually have bandwidth, we can make a beautiful, gorgeous, veggie-heavy meal and eat that. And we can do everything in between. So just that like shame-based shooting on yourself in terms of making those goals, it's not polyvagal informed. It's not nervous system informed. We need to be far kinder to ourselves and understand how we react and how our eating is affected by what our nervous system is experiencing.
Yes. Meg, if someone's like, I love you and your work, where can they find you?
So if you go to megbowmannutrition.com, you can read more about me. There's a link to my private practice, which is Nutrition Hive, and there's also resources for providers. There's some training specific for providers.
Wonderful. I will link your book in the show notes so everybody can grab it. And this is the time to love yourself, to tend to yourself, to nurture yourself, and really connect to what is your body telling you? What are you needing in your body? And your book really helps navigate folks through that. So thank you for the work you're doing in the world and your heart and being here today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to the Close the Chapter podcast. My hope is that you took home some actionable steps along with motivation, inspiration, and hope for making sustainable change in your life. If you enjoyed this episode, click the subscribe button to be sure to get the updated episodes every week and share with a friend or a family member. For more information about how to get connected, visit Kristen, KRISTEN, Boyce, BOICE.com. Thanks and have a great day.